We're at the top of the hexagram. Today is a sixth line day. We're in gate 44, and the sixth line is called aloofness. The sixth line here gives us a keynote that we can use for any sixth line, this aloofness. Both the fifth and the sixth lines, they know something very special. They know that you cannot put a saddle on an ego. They know that, and so their process is not the same as that of the first four lines, which are concerned with controlling the ego, putting a saddle on it, getting it to perform the way they want it to. This is quite different. Here it's the recognition that the ego works best when it thinks it's not being manipulated. And that's the whole thing about making an ego happy. Don't let it know it's being manipulated, which means that it has to be given latitude. You can only give the ego latitude if you've smelled out that ego and you recognize that it can handle some latitude, because you don't want to get into the fifth line business of having to step in when you've made a mistake. When you haven't been clean going in and you've got an ego that's fooling you, tricking you, and nothing is working out, because then you have to be pragmatic. You have to go in with a practical solution. You're out. Sorry, I gave you all that space, but you didn't fulfill your side of the bargain. Off you go. When we come to the sixth line, we come to the roof of the house, and there is nothing but a deep desire for transition. If you have a hexagram that's called coming to meet and you get to the sixth line, which is called aloofness, you know that this whole process of looking for the ego, this is in the past. It's not about looking for the ego. It has to be there, of course, because it's part of the way that you get out. It's part of the way you get to the throat and you get to manifestation. You have to go through the ego. But the sixth line is always looking for something grander in that sense. And be aware of something, that all six lines have within them a potential to be deeply depressed. This ability to stand on the top of the house, to be finished with the process, to be able to look out and beyond and wonder what is there, and long for it. Something that may come, that may not. You may get the opportunity, you may not. Because of that, there is this sense of, in the aloofness, that nobody is really going to fulfill that for me. I will not get that quality of ego that will lead far beyond all of this material plane that the personnel manager is locked into. The sixth line goes through its third line process when it's young. It recognizes how much it takes to try to manipulate an ego instead of waiting transpersonally for the right ego to show up and then just work with it. This is the magic of this sixth line. It gets to the point in its life where it simply rises up above the whole process. I'm not going to dirty my hands in manipulating and controlling these egos. I've had enough of that. And they go up on the hill. But if you're a 44 and you don't have the 26, it's a bit like being on a desert island without the partner of your dreams. The 44 can never dissociate itself from the 26. It can't. And that ego has its magic, because out of the ego, things really do get done. So the 44 goes up there and it does not give up. No six ever gives up. It's waiting, just waiting for the right ego. In the exaltation, a perfected renewal in which the establishment of a new form inures one to the condemnation of the rejected. The awareness of patterns that ensures one's instinctive well-being. This is somebody who has done their growing up and they end up finding themselves moving towards a career where they could have this kind of work. They would never stay there. They could never live out the personnel manager, not as a personnel manager. There's always something else that is further beyond for them. What is further beyond is the new form, something that is going to change the way the whole hierarchical structure operates. They do not need the ego on the other side. They're not lusting after it because they can be well and healthy within themselves. The sixth line rejects a lot on their way. They become aloof, they become above it all. They don't want to take charge of it until they can work with the right ego, and the right ego is one that they do not have to manipulate. They just have to use their sense of smell, their recognition of the pattern, give the ego its direction and let it do its work. In the detriment, intolerance and arrogance for lesser mortals. The awareness of patterns that can bolster the ego at the expense of the well-being of others. Remember, all gates want to be what they're not. And the 44, in its aloofness, being above the fray, it can begin to sound very much like an ego. However, it's from that place, from the possibility of what the 4426 is, that can be realized. No channel has a more mystical name than this, after all, the channel of surrender. Ra was asked any number of times why this particular channel is about surrender when it's so bloody material, and it's all about hooking the tribe and manipulating the ego. We're here to surrender to the form. This is what we're here for. And the 4426, they're form merchants. They sell things. It's all about the form. If we surrender to the form, all will be well. If you surrender to your nature, all will be well. This is the design of a transmitter. This is the ultimate thing for us to transmit. And to be truly healthy, we have to surrender to the form. And the job of the 4426 is that they live in a tribe that is unsurrendered to the form, so they keep on trying to get them to surrender to the form. So they sell them soap boxes and TVs and health programs and gurus and human design. And this has nothing to do with being concerned about just any other ego on the other side. It's about something else. Until they find that something else, they can never commit themselves to the power that is there. Their ability is to recognize a very special quality of ego that will be, in the mystical sense, a real surrender. And so what gets transmitted is something totally new. All 6 lines can infuse the collective with something that they are not yet aware of. All 6 lines, because they are collective themes as a whole, they can go deep into the collective. This is where the collective gets constantly enriched from the individual, from the tribe. So the collective slowly becomes this umbrella that we can all live under. And the 44th gate has a very important role. So the moment where you get to the point where you can wait for the ego, so you surrender to the form, then what do? Well, it goes directly into mutation. This way, it leads directly there. Once you find the way, once you find the power to be able to put out the knowledge of surrender to the form, your next step in the wheel is that you go to the realm of Sirius, the quarter of mutation. You move into the first gate, the creative, the individual expression in the Sphinx. The grounding here is in the 24th gate in the 6th line, called the gift horse. We know what the process of the 6th line is supposed to be. We know that they suffer when they're young and they go into their reclusiveness. They become wary, they become aloof. All these 6 line keynotes. And they become the fool on the hill. They sit up there, waiting. And what they're really good at is verifying the validity of the 5th line, checking on their manipulation, watching out for possible abuse. So I'm not totally sure where the gift horse comes into this. So please share if you've got any ideas on that. The moon is still in gate 5, been there since 3:32 this morning. It moves into gate 26 at 14:25, the gate of the egoist at the other end of the channel from the sun. Now we already have the channel of surrender because Venus has been there all week. So this is an energy that is maybe a little bit familiar to us now. And then the moon moves into gate 11 at 01:14, the gate of ideas, the gate of peace, This is an ajna gate in the collective abstract circuit. It's the possibility of the stream of sensing which runs from the head gate 64, the gate of confusion, into the 47, where it crosses over the ajna, and then it comes to the 11, having hopefully made sense of some of the confusion. And maybe there'll be a gate 56 around somewhere, and that will be able to express this stream, bring out the ideas so that they can be shared with the collective. So that's gate 44. We are out of splenic season, almost another few hours. And then we're moving into a bit of an individual season, one way and the other. But we're starting off with gate 1. And I will see you for the overview and for line 1 tomorrow. Oh, yeah, if you have any reflections on splenic season as a whole, or on gate 44 in particular, or any of the gates, please do leave some comments. I love reading your comments, and I love hearing about your experience. As I've said before, it's, for me, so much is, oh, not so much, but I mean, it's intellectual knowledge. I can only have intellectual knowledge about things that I don't have. And so it's always interesting to hear from people who have these activations, so that I can enrich my knowledge, which then hopefully makes my teaching more relevant and yeah, more, it gives something for other people to resonate to as well. Any anecdotes are always very welcome. Thank you very much for being with me through this gate 44, and I look forward to sharing gate 1 with you starting tomorrow. So until then, as always, go gently.